So, something that I've always noticed when I would go out to garage sales or rummage sales or whatever you want to call them, flea markets, stuff like that, I would look at their selection of movies and I would find these movies that I just thought were, like extremely odd. I found myself wondering, who would watch these movies? Why would someone buy these movies? I've never heard of these movies. Sometimes they star people I've never even heard of. And so that's what I kind of decided to do, and what I would want to see. So what I did is I went out to, a bunch of rummage sales and a bunch of garage sales, whatever, and I found five random movies that I've never heard of. And I'm going to watch them back to back. It's like 9.5 hours of movie watching. I'm going to watch them back to back. I'm going to talk about them, and hopefully one of them are good. I got five. I got The International, The Deal, Derailed, the unrated version, Rendition, and Untraceable. Untraceable. So, yeah. And I didn't even realize until like the day after I got these that two of these movies have Clive Owen in them. And I've never seen a movie with Clive Owen before. So, who knows? Yeah, so I'm going to go check these out, and I'll come back after I've seen them. Okay, so I'm back. I just watched all these movies. I picked a random order to watch them in. I first started off with Untraceable. It starred Diane Lane and Colin Hanks. I knew he looked familiar. I don't know if he's related to Tom Hanks or not. Some younger, less successful brother probably. A lot of those Hollywood people have younger, less successful brothers. Liam Hemsworth, Randy Quaid, Jaden Smith's older brother that no one cares about. Well, this movie, starting off, this movie was okay. It wasn't that bad. It's kind of familiar. It definitely seemed very similar to an episode of the TV show Millennium that I watched. It had a very similar premise to it. I kind of, just by my general knowledge of movies, I kind of saw where this was going a little bit. I knew the fate of certain characters. I think this is DVD's loose in there. I don't really care. But yeah, it was okay. I guess it was a decent enough start. And then I went on to Derailed, starring Clive Owen and Jennifer Aniston and Exhibit and some French guy, I can't see his name, Vincent something. It's covered. This was okay too. I think I might have liked Untraceable a little bit more. These two might have been a little even. This was my first movie that I've ever seen with Clive Owen in it. At least I think he is probably the most. He's probably the most generic-looking actor I've ever seen. Honestly, I guess that works if you're an actor. You're trying to be, Joe Nobody, not, looking like Ryan Reynolds or whatever. This was definitely a little predictable in most parts. I guess there was, the big twist early on involving certain characters I kind of predicted 30 minutes earlier. Okay, this is where it's going, huh? I can see that. But yeah. And so next, I actually ended up watching The International, starring Clive Owen and Naomi Watts again. another Clive Owen film. At this point, watching this, I was Clive Owened out. This was, I don't know, this wasn't really that interesting. Some stuff about a bank and it's wanting to buy weapons so it can like control third world countries. It wasn't that interesting, honestly. And see, it wasn't interesting, but it also wasn't boring because there were some action scenes that I thought were halfway decent. It's definitely not as good as the first two movies, and I think at this point, I definitely started to get a little worried that I was going downhill with the quality of these movies. At this point, I'm thinking like I got to finish this movie, and I got 2 movies left, so that's something. What this movie seemed like to me, it seemed like there was like a TV show in the '90s or something, and they adapted the whole first season into a movie. Because the movie felt a little hollow. It felt like there were characters or subplots or development that was just kind of missing. So that's what that felt like. It felt like a TV show that was remade into a movie. Kind of like what Shyamalan did to The Last Airbender. So not a good comparison. And next, I watched The Deal with Christian Slater and Selma Blair, and a lot of people, actually. John Hurd, Kevin Feige, I don't know, the asshole dad from Lost. Boy, was this boring. This was a very boring movie. And, I guess in contrast with The International, The International was interesting. The International wasn't interesting, but wasn't boring. This movie was interesting, but it was boring. They could have done this a lot better, and when I reached this point, I was just too tired, and I couldn't get through it. I wasn't paying attention, so I actually stopped watching and went to bed and figured I'd keep watching the next day. So that's why this, the shadows and the sunlight looks eerily similar, is because I did stop and I figured I'd just record the second half later in the day, put on the same clothes and whatnot. So, but this was boring. That's all I can say. It was boring. I suppose, people could like it. It's about like a company who wants to buy another company, I think, and the company is drilling for oil where they're not supposed to be drilling for oil, and it's so weird too, because at the end of the movie no one cares. They're like, oh well, we're getting the oil, who cares how we get it, whatever. They don't care in the movie, so why should I care? Honestly, it's just boring and dumb. And so, the last movie I had to watch was Rendition, starring a lot of people too. Jake Gyllenhaal, Reese Witherspoon, Peter Sarsgaard, Alan Arkin, Meryl Streep. I think J.K. Simmons was in it. He's not on the thing. Maybe he was less popular back in... When was this? 2005? It doesn't see a date on it. I don't know when this came out. It was like 2005, 2002. But there were a lot of people in this. And apparently Peter Sarsgaard was in it. And I don't know what he looks like, apparently. Because I thought I knew that name. And looking at this now, I was like, oh, Peter Sarsgaard was in it? I don't know. I guess he's one of the less memorable Sarsgaards. There's a lot of them, too. But I guess this movie was a somewhat decent way to end this all on, this long 9.5 hour journey. This was the longest of them, so I was kind of worried, like, oh my god, I hope this is good. This is like longer than all the other ones. So I was definitely worried that this wasn't going to be any good, and I was going to be in for a long, boring uninteresting movie. But it was okay. There were some twists and turns that I didn't see coming, playing with non-linear storytelling, I'll say, which also kind of made me think, why? I, this subplot seemed to have no general purpose besides a little bit of information that can help you understand the situation, but you didn't really need that. And there were a lot of names thrown around. I didn't know who these people were they're talking about. And Jake Gyllenhaal was okay. Sometimes he's not that good in movies. Sometimes he is. He's hit and miss sometimes, Gyllenhaal. Yeah, it's this movie, the plot, because that's kind of basically what I'm just judging these movies on, is the plot. I mean, they're all mediocre when it comes to acting or writing or directing. I mean, again, these are nothing special. These are movies that that people have probably never even heard of. I certainly haven't heard of them. The most recent one, I'm just trying to think of stuff to say about it. Maybe I was just so burnt out at this point that I don't even care. I paid attention during all these movies. But I don't know, a lot of other language stuff. When you're tired, you don't want to read subtitles. So that kind of got you too. The movie, boy, I'm struggling here. Maybe how much I'm struggling to talk about this movie is an indicator of the movie itself. So, yeah. I'll just leave it with that. I'll talk about the movie by not talking about the movie. Something else I wanted to point out, I forgot to talk about, The Deal. There's 10 other movies called The Deal. This is the 2005 version. There was a 2002 version, a 2008 version, a 2012 version. There's, of course, the version of The Deal that I like the best, but not many people have seen that version of The Deal. Yeah. So, that was that. That was interesting. I want to say I was pleased with that selection, but I can't. The movies were okay, for the most part. Some were less okay than others. Yeah, these are definitely movies that I would have never gotten. Maybe they had a Clive Owen fan that they wanted, or maybe there was a Christian Slater fan. Rendition sounds like a movie that someone would be interested in. Untraceable sounded like a movie that could have been popular at a time and then got forgotten. So I think Untraceable is the oldest of all these movies, if I'm not mistaken. No, 2008. Maybe 2008 is when it was packaged, because this seems like 90s. So if this was a 2008 movie, that kind of says something. Billy Burke was in it too. It was a pleasant surprise. Billy Burke is always good, so if this was really 2008, then this movie isn't as good as I might have thought it was, because this would have been good for its time. Because I mentioned, they did this movie in an episode of Millennium, and that came out in 1988. No, 1998 or something like that. So it was kind of behind, because the stuff they did in Millennium was very ahead of its time. So this is very behind. But yeah. Overall, there's not much to say. I guess it was interesting watching movies I've never seen. I get to add that to my collection, add that stuff to my library of movies. More movies I can say that I've watched, and update my letterboxd. Speaking of which, you can go in the description of this video. You'll see links to my letterbox. You can check that out. That's kind of cool. I like playing around with that. There'll be a Patreon, which right now, if you support me at the $1 tier, on Patreon. You can get access to all my videos a day early. You know, on Mondays I'm putting out a podcast. In between that, I'm doing, you know, little mini podcast rant things. I'm calling them monosodes. And yeah, just check that out. There'll be a link for the Discord too. I got some people in that. It's pretty cool. And until then, I will see you guys next time.